Well, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us here at Hebrew News, Primetime News. Trust you have been well this Friday. My name is Diana Rachel Mbugua. Our sign language interpreter for tonight is Joyce Wairimu. Now, Kenyatta National Hospital employees have threatened to down their tools next week, Monday, should the Salaries and Remuneration Commission not review their salaries and allowances. The employer will part with 2.4 billion shillings annually if the management accedes to their demands. The hundreds of doctors, nurses and non-medical staff held peaceful protests within KNH premises this Friday, during which their unions gave the strike notice. The protesters are members of the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union, Kenya National Union of Nurses, and Kenya Union of Domestic Hotels, Education Institutions, Hospitals and Allied Workers. The workers and the management have had a long-running dispute since 2012 when the State Corporation Advisory Committee recategorized all parastatals, including referral hospitals, from level 3B to PC 7A. The unions claim that recategorization should have come with a salary increment of all 7,000 workers, a discordant view from that of the KNH management and the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Now, still on health workers, the Association of Public Health Officers has threatened to down their tools if the government, through the Ministry of Health, will not look into their demands. According to the association's national chair, Matthew Kore, the public health officers have been discriminated against for a long time now, and yet they are in the front line in the fight against COVID-19.
The push and pull between the health workers, health ministry and the government has been on for months now with little or no intervention. Speaking in Eldoret through the Association of Public Officers National Chair Matthew Kore, the health officer said since the first case of COVID-19 was reported in the country in March, members have been facing tough times.
Despite the fact that we are frontline healthcare workers, we have done a lot in terms of tracing and screening. And this is an issue that the Enumeration Commission and the Ministry of Health per se must take into issue. How will it be? We are discriminated, but when it is coming to service, we are taken as undertakers to go and even bury the dead.
Kore says that despite the association raising their concerns to the government, no action has been taken.
Death is one. You cannot divide cadres when you are allowing, when we are doing the duty, we are one. But when you are going to make the salaries and the allowances, they are different. This is an issue that the Enumeration Commission has to look into. We have petitioned this issue to the COG. We have also written to Enumeration Commission, and we are not seeing any changes. So we want to appeal that very soon, if things are not going to happen, we will go on a nationwide strike for public health to stop these services for a while, so that we can see the difference.
And as if remuneration is not the only challenge they face when handling COVID-19 patients.
We qualified from the same universities, the same colleges, the same courses, and we are coming here to be discriminated. This is something that we don't want to see. Uniform allowances for public health is very key at the moment. And we want this to be given to public health. Nurses are having uniform allowances, clinical officers are having. Why not public health?
Despite months after the government promised the healthcare workers of compensation and comprehensive cover, this is yet to be implemented. They have now vowed to down their tools if no intervention is done. Winnie Lubembe for Ebru TV.
Still on matters health, 13 people in the country have died from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of deaths to 682. In a statement sent to newsrooms by the Ministry of Health, 218 more people as well tested positive for the virus. The total confirmed cases at 37,707. Meanwhile, 170 people have recovered, 79 from the home-based care program, while 91 were discharged from various health facilities across the country. The total recovery is now at 24,504. Now moving on, President Uhuru Kenyatta has slammed church leaders condoning politicians who are after dividing churchgoers. The head of state, who hosted religious leaders early today, lashed at clergies who are fond of falling before politicians for handouts instead of advocating matters affecting the common mwananchi. Our reporter Jeff Haemba with more details.
Before sun sets each day, the number of the leaders who have visited Deputy President William Ruto's residence amounts to more than 100. Each and every passing day, leaders will throng at either current office or at his Sugoi home for either political, religious or other unknown matters. This has, however, not augured well, with the President Uhuru Kenyatta was urged church leaders to refrain from politicians who are after dividing the church.
The leadership of the church in the anti-corruption fight is highly appreciated, but I do believe that there is still more room for action from our religious leaders. It is an all-of-society fight, and the government alone cannot win this battle.
The head of state, who hosted religious leaders at State House led by Archbishop Anthony Muheria, the chairperson of the Interfaith Council on COVID-19, requested the leaders to continue feeding Kenyans with the message of hope and also to remain nonpartisan.
It matters political. I know the church remains above politics, but we all have a duty to help our people to know that we cannot be a nation whose sole obsession is politics. All year, every year, year in and year out.
Deputy President William Ruto, who believes in the hustler narrative, has maintained a resolute stand to contest for presidency despite intimidation from his competitors, some who are close allies of President Uhuru Kenyatta. According to Kenyatta, the church should be a sacred place of worship and not for political reasons.
Positions ni ya watu wachache. Kazi ni yetu sisi zote. Na hatuwezi kukubali ati watu watuambie wako na godfather. Sisi tunawaambia tuko na God the Father. So we are telling those who are selling to us fear, they should stop that nonsense.
So I want to urge all our religious leaders to take this message of accountability to your sanctuaries and inspire our people by your deeds and indeed by example. Be temples of harmony and love for all Kenyans. Temples, as you have stated yourselves, of justice, equity, and fairness.
In a hard-hitting statement, President Kenyatta, without naming any leaders, said there are some leaders who are after dividing the church for own personal interests. It was in the same meeting where the head of state and the religious leaders agreed to host national prayers on Saturday 10th of October this year to, among other national issues, pray for the country's battle with COVID-19.
I call upon you to be the voice of reason and to foster messages of hope for the wellness of our nation. We need you as our religious leaders to be non-partisan and persons who can help heal divides. Continued partnership between the church and the state in the delivery of public good, education, healthcare, and other areas is key to my administration.
The president and the religious leaders also discussed a post-COVID-19 economic recovery, divisive politics, and the Big Four agenda at the meeting that was attended by the Cabinet Secretaries Freddie Matiang'i of Interior, Ukuru Yatani of National Treasury, and Professor George Magoha, among others. Reporting for Ebro TV, I'm Jeff Haemba.
Now, the country is well on its way to being treated to an all-out political war between ODM Chief Raila Odinga and Deputy President William Ruto. Raila has branded Ruto the enemy of economic progression. Raila now says the Orange Party is gearing to face Ruto head-on in what promises to be an interesting political duel.
And I'm confident that with your non-commitment and support, we shall win the war.
The stage is setting up for a bruising political battle between ODM Chief Raila Odinga and Deputy President William Ruto, with Raila waging on with his attacks against the DP, who he now calls the enemy of economic progression.
But because they have no conscience, no ideals and no principles that they are ready and willing to live and even die for, they have always benefited from the fruits of what they opposed, and they see no contradiction.
While addressing the party's National Executive Committee in Machakos County, Raila says they must attack Ruto head-on and once and for all, since he has a historical record of going against the national good.
These anti-reform forces are not new. They're the same ones that opposed a return to multi-party democracy. The same ones who opposed the push for constitutional reforms in the 1990s. The same ones who opposed the new constitution in 2010. The same ones who opposed the unity of purpose between President Uhuru Kenyatta and myself. And the same ones who are opposing the war on corruption and now.
And in what is likely to become the political dog whistle in the coming days, the opposition chief remained adamant that the BBI is the key to taking this country to the right direction.
When they give it, we are not discouraging our youth from taking. Take it. It is actually a product of corruption. Like throwing maize to a chicken so that it can come closer to be arrested, so that it can be slaughtered.
And as the country gears up for the 2022 general election,
we have defeated these forces before. I promise you, we'll defeat them again.
The ODM chief has told the key organ of his party to be ready for a new political alliance. For the first time, Raila hinting that a partnership with President Kenyatta could be in the offing in what could shake up the country's political terrain.
The drums of war, all in a bid to scuttle change. We must stop them from dragging the country into anarchy. We must forge new alliances and strengthen existing ones with the aim of getting the country to move forward. Our existing alliance with the reform wing of Jubilee, led by the President, has seen the country move forward in critical areas like fighting corruption and initiating key development projects evenly to more parts of the country.
Now, the United Green Movement Party has urged President Uhuru Kenyatta to heed Chief Justice David Maraga's advice to dissolve Parliament for its failure to enact the two-thirds gender principle. As Busara Naaman reports, former parliamentarians have urged the president to hasten the BBI process, which will assist in implementing the two-thirds gender rule. Have a look.
Chief Justice David Maraga's advisory to the President on dissolving Parliament for its failure to enact the two-thirds gender principle continues to elicit mixed reactions from Kenyans. Barely a day after the High Court directed that a three-bench judge be constituted to hear the highly emotive matter that has divided the nation down the middle, leaders have come up with new ideas to resolve the stalemate. Former Members of Parliament Association FOPA, led by former Gatanga MP Humphrey Njuguna and former nominated MP Hassan Osman, have called upon the President to implement the BBI so as to resolve the two-third gender principle issue.
So we feel as an association that this advisory opinion has opened the chance for Kenyans to embrace the BBI initiative.
Suluhisho, tunaomba Rais achilia BBI, Wakenya watoe maoni yao kwa referendum.
They noted that the current situation has created a perfect opportunity for the BBI.
The two-third gender rule. So I have an issue of victimizing the of Parliament because it was in 11 Parliament, I think 2 times.
Kwa ile kukosa kwetu wakati huo na kukosa kwetu ama kukosa kwa wale wenzetu ambao wako katika bunge wakati huu, tunasema Wakenya mtusamehe.
Elsewhere, The United Green Movement Party has threatened to evict MPs from Parliament come October 13th if the president does not dissolve Parliament.
The Constitution created timelines within which to enact laws. You cannot tell us that it is the 11th Parliament that was offensive. No, because Parliament is an institution. You cannot tell me because laws were created in 1965, 1966, like the Penal Code, they are no longer relevant because the Parliament that created them in 1965 is no longer in existence.
Party leader and former Mbugua Member of Parliament Agostino Neto and Secretary General Hamisa Zaja maintain that the Constitution is supreme and its validity cannot be questioned.
Hatungojei ati ati hapana. Ni lini? Si kwa sababu ya kina mama peke yake, lakini siku nyingine itakuwa ni kina baba.
That Parliament is going to be dissolved is sure. What we are waiting for is when, for two reasons. One, when the hearing is finished, the best Justice Correll will do is to tell the petitioners that they've been heard, and he'll just tell them the Constitution itself cannot be inconsistent because of Article 2, because of supremacy of the Constitution.
Parliament was required to enact legislation to operationalize the requirement that no more than 2/3 of agenda will take up seats in public elective and appointive bodies as outlined in the Constitution promulgated in 2010. Article 261 of the consequential legislation allows the Chief Justice to render advice for dissolution of Parliament if the period set out under the 5th schedule lapses without the enactment of the requisite laws. Busara Naman for Ebru TV.
Former Nairobi Deputy Governor Jonathan Mweke has joined the United Green Movement Party as Co-Secretary General. This comes 2 weeks after he resigned from Wiper Party, saying he would soon announce where he was headed. Mweke is expected to run for Kitui governor on the party's ticket. Mweke's move comes 2 months after former Machakos Senator Johnston Muthama ditched the Wiper Party, saying it was a tribal outfit.
As we embark on selling our ideals, values and policies in each corner of our nation, we invite you all to join us in building a true national party which will stand the test of time. A party which will deliver the promise that tomorrow will be better than today. Whether you are a youth, a clergy, or in the Juakali sector. Whether you are a professional, a farmer, or in the civil society. Whether you are rich, poor, or in the middle class. We welcome your thoughts, experience, and resources, which will help us build together a successful Kenya and bring to an end our economic struggle. We ask you to get involved and help rebuild your country.
Away from politics now to an interesting one here. A 30-year-old man from Kibra here in Nairobi has been forced into circumcision by residents. It is said the man who had defied to face the knife for 18 years was forcefully circumcised after being cornered by a group of villagers. The man faced the wrath of residents who marched him to where he underwent the cut.
In the streets of Nairobi, the Kibra dwellers crisscrossed all the corners in songs and dance of initiation rites. Both men and women, young and the elderly, joined in what seemed to be a rare moment, the moment of circumcision. The man, aged 30, had been cornered by the residents after evading several circumcision passage seasons.
Ini culture yetu kama wa UG Bama Saba circumcision. Siku ya leo kijana wetu amefika siku ya kutahiri akiwa mwanaume. Vile tunatoka hapa hivi tunaenda kumtahiri Kibira Tarajani. Yeah.
They marched towards the center, then proceeded to Kawangware on road in a distance that took about 16 kilometers.
Kwa saa hii culture yetu inaanza mwezi wa 8, tunaendelea mpaka mwezi wa Disemba tarehe 30 ndio tunamalizia. Na tunatembea, hatujatembea tu hivi hivi. Tumeenda kwa chief, tukaomba ruhusa, tukapewa barua yenye tunatembea nayo.
The man is said to have disappeared from the area before he was spotted in the area after a long time where he faced the wrath of the resident.
Meshika nyama yetu ilikuwa imejificha. Leo ni leo imepatikana. Huyu paka lazima tukate. Leo imejificha miaka mingi. Kimila yetu hata uzae watoto, hata ukufe tunakutahiri hata kama ni maiti. Sisi tumeamua hivyo.
After being frog marched in a lengthy distance, the man who had defied was forcefully circumcised in Kibra area.
Nikiona watu hawa, mimi nilitahiri mwaka wa 86 nikiwa na miaka 12. Saa hii tumeona huyo kijana alikuwa amekificha kabisa. Tulimtafuta paka huko Tao, sijui naita Marikiti, ndio tukamshika. Leo amekubali tumtoe hiyo ngozi ya mama yenye alisalika nayo. Ako na miaka 30. Ameoa wabibi wawili. Ndio naona sheria ya kwetu ya kimila itakikani lazima kama umeoa hata ujadairi hata ukikufa tunadairi hiyo maiti. Ndio naona leo tumeamua hata yeye amekubali. Tuende tumutairi.
Kwa hivi nakubali niko na teni yao. Hapo nimemaliza. Lazima nilipe. Nimekubali.
This was being conducted in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic where they all defied the regulations. The duo had obtained a letter from the era chief to conduct the ceremony. Reporting for Ebro TV, I'm Jeff Khaemba.
Well, as thousands of pupils countrywide prepare for reopening of institutions next month, a public primary school in Mathira, Nyeri County, may not reopen after the only ablution block collapsed. The pupils will have to remain home until their need is dealt with satisfactorily.
For the parent of more than 200 pupils of Gadwini Primary School in Mathira West in Nyeri County will have to remain at school with their sons and daughters after their effort to seek help from the government and constituency development offices bore no fruits. Speaking after a meeting with parents, the school head teacher Utica Ngatia said that trouble at the institution started in March this year when the toilet collapsed due to heavy rains.
Nimejulisha sub-county director wa Mathira West hiyo shida, nimejulisha hata DCC wa Mathira West hiyo shida. Nilikutwa na public health akalaani, he condemned the toilets na akasema we have to do something immediately. Sida ile inaonekana inakuwa ni tu kupuuza tu. I don't see any good reason. Kwa sababu naenda ninajieleza, ninawaeleza na sioni sababu ya kutopatia pesa kwa sababu tulikuwa I had applied for emergency allocation.
A parent at the school, Penina Wanjiru, said that she cannot risk taking her children to the institution owing the poor state of the school and having been neglected by the leaders.
Kwangu mimi kama mzazi, hakuna mtoto nitaitikia kuje, juu hakuna choo, hakuna hata maji. Sasa mimi naonelea tu watoto watakaa tu nyumbani. Na tena niko na swali kwa akina Ligavi. Ligavi tunaona huko akina huko kwao amefanya kazi. Lakini huku kwetu ametuachilia kabisa. Kinaiti pia hata hivyo tu anafanya tu hivyo. Anakuja lakini hakuna kitu wanatusaidia nayo.
Kulingana na ile mikakati imewekwa na serikali, inasemekana shule watoto wanaweza rudi shule kuanzia tarehe 4 mwezi wa 10. Hiyo tukiangalia sisi kama wazazi tunaona pengine tusipofanya bidii watoto hawatarudi shule, na ndio ilitufanya kuje leo tuwe na mkutano chini ya mwalimu wetu mkuu ili tujue ni lipi tutaendelea nalo.
On his part, Mathira Constituency Development Chairman Wahome Mwangi denied the allegation, claiming limited fund allocation which was supposed to take care of emergencies.
Additionally, we also hope that in such areas like now Gadoino, where you just come from, which lies in a area that is waterlogged, we'll have a more secure toilets. Well, I think if I'm not wrong, we had requested for about 1.5 million because we know that also the toilets that were affected were for the pupils and the teachers, and we think with the technology that we're using, we should be able to accommodate with about 1.5 million. We should be able to do that.
Reporting for Ibru TV, I'm Dolly Mirigi.
Now, 3 people have been charged in Machakos court for being in preparation to commit a felony after being caught red-handed with communication gadgets from different institutions, among them telecommunication and banking companies. Have a look.
Of the Registration of Persons Act,
Kevin Sagini Oroko, Otiso Dominic Nyabuto and Samson Okindo appeared before Brenda Barto, a senior magistrate, having been found in the possession of a laptop, printer, 6 mobile phones, 600 Safaricom and 34 Airtel SIM cards, 91 Kenya national identity of different persons, 3 Equity Bank transaction agent register, 1 KCB transaction agent register, and 13 KCB Inua Jamii ATM Visa cards of different persons, all having believed to be stolen or rather unlawfully obtained.
This court finds that the state has given no reason as to why these 3 accused persons ought not to be granted bond.
The 3 individuals pleaded not guilty and were therefore released with a 300,000 Kenya shilling bond and 1 surety each in the accusation of unlawful possession of identity cards belonging to another person.
Therefore, the grounds by the state do not hold water, that each will deposit bond of Kenya shillings 300,000 with 1 surety of similar amount.
Their case will be mentioned on 13th of October this year.
Now, Kenyan students planning to pursue their degrees in the U.S. may have to rethink their plans, with President Donald Trump's government planning to bar them from getting student visas not longer than 2 years. The move, which is contained in proposals by the United States Department of Homeland Security, will see students unable to pursue education in American universities, where degrees and other certifications take about 4 years of study. According to the new DHS proposal, students from countries on the state sponsor of terrorism list, that is Iran, Syria, Sudan, and Northern Korea, and citizens of countries with over 10% overstay rate will be limited to the 2-year student visa. Well, on that note, we take a very short break, but we'll be right back with more news from the international world as well as business. Don't go too far. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the broadcast. Now, U.S. Agency for Global Media CEO Michael Park is the first presidential appointee to serve in a new position created by Congress to modernize U.S.-funded broadcasting efforts worldwide. Since taking charge in June, the U.S. International Broadcasting CEO has drawn bipartisan criticism for removing agency broadcasting chiefs and initiating a security review that resulted in some foreign Voice of America journalists losing their visas. VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson reports.
From Hong Kong to Belarus to China, 2020 has been a challenging year for a free press and access to information. But lawmakers Thursday mainly scrutinized the decisions of new U.S. International Broadcasting CEO Michael Pack, who ignored a congressional subpoena to appear and answer the committee's questions.
He is making a mockery of a U.S. agency that has long enjoyed strong bipartisan support. And he has shown tremendous disrespect for the committee, our committee, and its role overseeing USAGM. He's the wrong person for the job. He should resign, and if he doesn't, the president should fire him.
Pack is a former documentary filmmaker who has previously headed public and government broadcasting efforts. He testified last September he respects the news agency's editorial independence.
The whole agency rests on the belief that the reporters are independent, that no political influence is telling them how to report the news.
During his 2-year-long confirmation process, Democrats alleged Pack had misused funds from his documentary production company, while Senate Republicans praised his experience.
This man is uniquely qualified to hold this position.
But Pack's decisions since taking charge in June have concerned lawmakers from both parties.
CEO PAC has ignored the will of Congress and withheld millions of dollars in funding from OTF. This is not a typical DC policy discussion. I believe his actions damaged support during the height of unrest in Hong Kong, and they are continuing to do so today in Belarus. Their tragic lack of support to freedom and democracy movements is also regrettable.
The Open Technology Fund, a group that uses U.S. government grants to promote internet freedom worldwide, is suing USAGM, alleging it breached its contracts by withholding $18 million in funds.
The goal is not to resolve evidence-based concerns, but rather to discredit OTF. More devastating, the agency continues to withhold nearly $20 million in congressionally allocated funds, forcing OTF to halt 49 out of its 60, or 80%, of its ongoing internet freedom programs.
In June, PAC fired several executives in what Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey called a wholesale firing spree.
To date, more than 3 months later, no successors have been named to replace me or my counterparts at the other networks. Sadly, CEO PAC's arrival has brought only more chaos and uncertainty to U.S. international broadcasting. The turmoil could not come at a worse time. To be blunt, I fear we are falling behind our competitors in the information space.
USAGM has been criticized in a government audit for improperly conducting security checks on some of its journalists, an issue some Republicans praised PAC for addressing.
The reforms undertaken by Mr. PAC have undergone a significant amount of public scrutiny, as they should. But USAGM's poor vetting procedures over those last decades continue to threaten U.S. national security, and it's entirely the fault of those who mismanaged the process.
But one decision was roundly criticized by lawmakers from both parties. PAC ordered a security review that resulted in a failure to renew the J-1 visas of foreign journalists working at VOA.
We bring people here. We ask them to be honest and to speak truth to countries where speaking truth can get you killed, or at least imprisoned. Then Mr. Park denies their the application, refuses to file the application to extend their J-1 visas, which means they're subject to deportation to the very place that we ask them to tell truth to a country where truth is illegal.
At least 5 VOA journalists have departed the country since their work permits expired, and as many as 20 more are expected to leave by the end of the year. PAC has defended its focus on security by suggesting being a journalist could be a cover for being a spy.
It's incredibly dangerous for the USAGM head to start basically writing the press release that the Kremlin can then turn around and use the next week about USAGM journalists.
In a letter to Chairman Engel, PAC said he could not appear before the committee due to a scheduling conflict and offered several possible dates for his testimony in October, when the U.S. House is expected to be out of session. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
Welcome to the world of business. The Kenya Tea Development Agency, KTDA, now wants dialogue with the government over the tea industry regulations 2020 that are expected to streamline the sector. KTDA Chairman Peter Kanyago argued that if the regulations are implemented the way they are, it would be disastrous to the tea industry in the country. Kanyago was speaking to the press in Nyeri town during a meeting to consider the second tea bonus payment for Chinga Tea Factory, where he is also a director.
KTDA Chairman Peter Kanyago warned against politicizing the tea sector, adding that KTDA is meeting a regulation that calls for farmers to be paid for the tea leaves delivered within 1 month. Kanyago said the regulations ordered by the president in January this year proposed that 80% of the tea to be sold at the Mombasa auction, but the regulation proposed that 100% be sold at the auction.
We want a dialogue with the government. That's all I'm trying to say. If there's some improvement we can do in one area or another, we do it. But now just going and implementing without dialogue with the stakeholders, that will not augur well for the industry. Tea is very stable. Let us not politicize the same, and it will go from strength to strength.
The chairman pointed out that the 10% performance bond imposed on tea by the regulations would only drive away buyers to Kenya's competitors.
Some of the regulations will put Kenya tea in jeopardy. I can give you an example of, they are saying we put 10%, the buyers put 10% performance bond to offer. The tea from Rwanda, the tea from Uganda, the tea from Tanzania will not have that performance board. If you are a buyer, you would buy the teas which are not imposing more cost to you.
He claimed there was no proper public participation conducted and those done online failed to capture the views of all stakeholders, adding that they were only given 2 weeks, which were not adequate. He said that agriculture is a devolved function and claimed that governors were left out during the drafting of the new tea regulations, prompting the COG chair Wycliffe Oparanya to protest.
We are saying let there be proper public participation. The other thing is, you saw the letter from the Council of Governors. Tea is devolved. And the governors were never consulted. And they have written a letter. So there were no proper consultations. And that's all we are requesting. Let there be proper consultations. And we are not fighting anything. We are not fighting at all.
Kanyago has cautioned against politicization of the tea bonus, which he said was far less than last year's, adding that excess tea was produced due to favorable weather conditions, fetching less prices in the market. Reporting for Ebru TV, I'm Kaindo Stefano.
Now, at least 58% of clean water is shared across the country. This is according to Water CS Cecily Kariuki, who toured Kisii County to assess a 2.5 billion shillings water project. The Water CS further added that the government is putting up mechanisms of expanding water collection points and also the construction of more dams.
When touring Kisii County to assess a 2.3 billion shillings water projects under the Lake Victoria South Waterworks, Water CS Cecily Kariuki said only 58% of clean water is shared across the country.
We need to grow from where we are in terms of safe water coverage as a country, which is currently at about 58%, to cover more people for that percentage to actually increase, as he's committed to have water as one of the most basic rights, but also one of the enabling commodities and input into both social aspects of our lives, but also the economic aspects of our lives. And that is what it is that we are doing at the ministry to ensure that that coverage goes up.
She said the government is in the process of expanding more water collection points and also build sufficient dams.
There's so many people that can be covered if we are able to expand the distribution. I have taken it from the governor that we will be looking for resources to invest to be able to cover more people. The Bunyunyu Dam, which has been on the drawing board for some time, is also now one that we need to mobilize resources from headquarters, given that the issues which were holding back this project, ranging from issues of land, acquisition of land upon which this dam is going to be constructed, are more or less resolved now.
On his part, Kisii Governor James Ongwae said a 1.5 billion sewer line program is underway in the county, which will boost water supply.
What we have asked Cecily is that we also need very, very serious reticulation of that waste. Also ensure that it reaches a number of households, and it also goes to all those areas that the water is going, it also goes there. Unfortunately for her and for me, that reticulation program for waste management would require not less than 1.5 billion shillings.
The expansion of water project will see more than 200,000 residents get clean water. Daniel Dembede, Ebru TV, Kisii County.
Now, preparations of the 9th AfriCities Summit in Kisumu next year are on course despite the COVID-19 pandemic that has adversely affected various sectors. With over 10,000 visitors expected in Kisumu during the conference, the government has exuded confidence that the summit will be a success, with the war on the pandemic being won. This came as a multi-agency technical committee involving the national and county government was inaugurated to prepare for the conference slated for November next year.
This trip was supposed to come with a clear roadmap.
According to the CS for Devolution, Eugene Wamalwa, the pandemic has affected preparations for the summit, which will be the second to be held in the country. Wamalwa was, however, quick to note that the national and Kisumu county governments were working as a unit ahead of the major conference.
The theme of the conference from what is being developed will be the future of African cities. Coming out of this COVID-19 experience, we realize that most of our populations in the future will live in the cities. They're the same cities that are hardest hit by COVID-19. So we need to plan better to have more resilient cities, better planned cities in the future. And Kisumu City is going to be the first intermediary city to host an event such as this.
On his part, Kisumu Governor Peter Anyang' Nyong'o said that his government had put in all measures and established committees to plan for the summit. He admitted that the pandemic had hindered the plans for more meetings, but was quick to note that they had ample time to plan.
We couldn't have held this meeting here today, but we can now hold it because we've been assured by the Minister of Health that it's now safer to do so. We couldn't have thought of putting resources to any other thing but COVID-19 because all arms of government, both at the national and county level, were being mobilized to fight this pandemic whose dimensions we didn't know. We didn't even know where it was taking us. So in such a situation of inexactitude, a lot of things were affected.
Speaking in Lake Naivasha Resort, where he met the technical committee, Wamalwa noted that a roadmap, budget and a work plan had been released. The CS said the summit would be used to showcase that devolution could work and challenge the regional economic bloc to join in the preparations.
They've given us a very clear roadmap beginning now up to November. As I've said before, we've only been having this event in capital cities. We hosted this in Nairobi. So taking it out to Kisumu will show those who have just become into Nairobi and Mombasa that there are other cities in Kenya apart from Nairobi and Mombasa. So
Nyong'o said that they would have test runs ahead of the summit with the major conference on the 9th of October in Kisumu. Reporting for Ebro TV, I'm Kaindo Stefano.
Let's take a look at the world of sports. President Uhuru Kenyatta will on Saturday reopen the Nyayo National Stadium in Nairobi, more than 3 years since it was closed for renovations. The stadium was among the 5 facilities earmarked to host the 2018 African Nations Championship in January 2018, but Kenya lost the hosting rights due to the lack of venues readiness. This left the Confederation of African Football, CAF, with no choice but to strip Kenya of the hosting rights in December 2017. Apart from Nyayo, other facilities that had been earmarked to host the Continental Championship were Kinori Stadium in Embu, the Kenyatta Stadium in Machakos, and the Kipchoge Keino Stadium in Eldoret. Once reopened, the facility will host the Nairobi leg of World Athletics Continental Tour, dubbed Kip Keino Classic, on October 3rd. With local football league matches expected to be next in line. Now, Kenya's long-distance athlete Patrick Ciel has been slapped with a ban of 3 years and 6 months by the Athletics Integrity Unit for an anti-doping violation. According to a statement released by AIU today, the athlete was found guilty of evading an out-of-competition test that was to be conducted on him on December 18, 2019 in Kapsabet, Nandi County. Now, although Ciel was subject to a 4-year ban, AIU revealed that the athlete admitted to the violation, hence a reduction of the sanction by 6 months. Further, AIU notes that it was the first anti-doping violation to be committed by the athlete. The 23-year-old CL ban will thus commence on March 16, 2020, when he admitted the offense. CL joins the growing list of Kenyan athletes who have been banned this year for anti-doping violation, including former world marathon record holder Wilson Kipsang. Well, this is where we wrap up Ibru Primetime News. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. From me and the team, it's bye-bye. I now leave you with the weather forecast. My name is Rachel Mbugua. Our sign language interpreter for tonight has been Joyce Werimo. Have yourself a lovely night and a fantastic weekend ahead.